Dennis Collins has spent most of his adult life watching deals fall apart and come back together, but nothing from his 4 decades in the automotive world rattled him quite like what he witnessed happening inside Gas Monkey Garage. He was not an employee. He never clocked in and out with the rest of the crew. He walked into that building as Richard Rawlings' closest friend, a man who had shared 20 years of history with Richard before the cameras ever showed up, which meant he occupied a position that nobody else on that show could claim. Close enough to feel the heat, but positioned just far enough back to see the entire picture without getting pulled into every fight. Before any of that, Dennis was just a kid in Dallas who could not stop thinking about cars. It started with toy cars arranged across his childhood bedroom floor and found its first real ignition point when he got behind the wheel of a 1966 blue Ford Mustang during high school, the kind of car that rewires a person permanently once they feel what it can do. He went on to earn degrees in economics and finance from the University of Texas at Dallas, and where most people carrying those credentials would have walked straight into a bank or a consulting firm, Dennis turned left and never looked back. In 1984, he opened Collins Brothers Jeep in Texas, building a shop that earned a reputation for expert restoration and conversion work focused specifically on the Wrangler and CJ series. His appetite for rare machinery never slowed down. Over the years, his personal collection grew to include more than 200 Austin Healys, and sitting at the crown of that collection is the very first Nash Healy ever manufactured, built in 1950, a piece of automotive history that explains better than any resume what kind of collector Dennis actually is. He also owned Black Mountain Jeep conversions, adding another layer to a business portfolio that now carries a net worth around $30 million. His friendship with Richard Rawlings started at a Harley-Davidson rally, the kind of environment where two people who genuinely love engines find each other fast and decide they never want to stop talking. What transformed that friendship into something cemented in both of their histories was a drive that most people in the car world only ever discuss in reverent tones. Together, they pushed a 1999 Ferrari 550 Maranello from New York to Los Angeles in 31 hours and 59 minutes, breaking the historic Cannonball Run record and placing both names on a very short list of people who had ever done something that audacious and pulled it off cleanly. Dennis also earned a prestigious award at the Kuwait Concours d'Elegance for his restoration of a 1958 Austin Healey two-seater he called Goldie, and Richard celebrated that achievement publicly on Facebook, not because he had to, but because that is genuinely how their relationship worked. Richard even acknowledged on social media how much that win meant, reinforcing the kind of mutual respect that goes deeper than business partnerships usually allow. What Dennis held inside Gas Monkey Garage was not a job title or a defined role. His presence was rarer and in many ways more difficult to carry because he cared deeply about the people involved while holding no authority to fix what was slowly breaking around him. He watched the long hours accumulate, the deadlines compress, the personalities sharpen against each other, and the cracks in the team spread in ways the Discovery Channel cameras never fully picked up. The reality television audience watching Fast and Loud saw exciting builds, big deals, and the kind of chaos that looks fun from a couch. What Dennis saw was the version that happened before and after the cameras rolled. Quiet resentments building over months, exhausted mechanics pushing through projects on timelines that no craftsman would have chosen freely, and a pressure cooker environment that eventually forced every significant cast member to make a choice they had not wanted to face. Aaron Kaufman was the first departure that genuinely stung, and for anyone who understood how Gas Monkey Garage actually functioned, it was also the most structurally damaging. Aaron had taught himself everything from the ground up, learning hot rodding, fabrication, and car mechanics without a formal program guiding him, and the results of that self-built education were visible in every car that rolled out of that garage with his fingerprints on it. He had been part of Gas Monkey Garage since its early days and climbed to lead mechanic through nothing but output and talent. By the time the show became a legitimate television hit on Discovery Channel, Aaron's hands were responsible for a disproportionate share of what made those builds memorable. The friction was not about personal animosity in the simple sense. It was a collision between what an artist needs to do real work and what a successful reality television format demands. The show required quick turnarounds, contained budgets, and projects small enough to wrap inside a production window. Aaron wanted to build something like the eco-boosted De Tomaso Pantera, a project with scale and ambition that matched his actual abilities. The format had no room for that. Richard admitted later that Aaron's departure in 2017 came completely out of left field for him, which itself reveals how much distance had grown between them on the most basic level of communication. After leaving, Aaron opened Archite Fabrication in Dallas, where he focused on personal car design and aftermarket parts for Ford F-100 pickup trucks, and he landed 2 television shows of his own, Shifting Gears with Aaron Kaufman and Aaron Needs a Job, both of which gave him the creative space he had been looking for. He was open afterward about how Fast and Loud did not always reflect reality and how confined he had felt inside that structure. For Dennis, who had watched Aaron work up close and understood exactly what that level of mechanical talent was worth, this was not just a staffing change. It was the garage losing the thing that had made it irreplaceable. Christy Brimberry carried a different kind of weight when her time at the garage ended. She ran the office side of Gas Monkey Garage with a competence that made everything else function, handling the money, managing the operational chaos, and providing a steady warmth that balanced the louder energies working around the cars. In October 2016, she received a diagnosis of thyroid cancer and immediately went into emergency surgery to remove a cancerous lymph node. That surgery cut the nerve running to her larynx, which meant she lost her voice for a period doctors estimated at up to 6 months. Chemotherapy followed. Radiation treatments followed. Carrying all of that while continuing to operate inside a television production environment that ran on speed and volume and constant activity would have been unsustainable for almost anyone. She left the show in 2017, citing health concerns, and by December of that year, she confirmed publicly that she was entirely cancer-free, a moment the Gas Monkey Garage Facebook page marked with a message of genuine warmth. The specifics of any workplace tensions during that stretch have never been fully aired in public, but Dennis understood the accumulated weight of fighting a serious illness while also navigating the demands of a hit show. What stayed with him was not any single disagreement, but the broader pattern. An environment built entirely around speed and production had no natural mechanism for slowing down to support someone going through something that serious. Tom Smith's exit arrived with far less ambiguity and far more noise than any of the departures before it. A confrontation with Richard Rawlings escalated until Tom allegedly directed profanity at his employer, and the response was immediate dismissal. Tom himself stated later that it was the only job he had ever been fired from and that the reason given did not hold up to scrutiny in his view. For Dennis, who had already watched Aaron leave for creative reasons and Christy step away under the weight of her health situation, this was not a standalone incident. It was the same fundamental problem announcing itself again through a different person, a different argument, and a different moment of no return. Talented, skilled people kept arriving at the same wall with Richard, and the outcomes kept repeating. Tom went on to co-found Misfit Garage alongside Jordan Butler, Thomas Weeks, and Scott McMillan, naming their venture Fired Up Garage and building it into a spin-off show that put their story directly in conversation with the one they had left behind. The show never reached the viewership heights of Fast and Loud, and the behind-the-scenes pressures that plagued reality television production found them too, but years after the initial break, Tom sat back down with Richard at Gas Monkey Garage to talk through what had actually happened between them. That reunion revealed layers of complexity that the original firing had papered over, showing that the relationship was never as simple as one argument and one door slamming shut. Jordan Butler's departure ran alongside Tom's and arrived with a story that carries more weight the longer you sit with it. According to Tom Smith, both of them walked away after an incident involving a fan who had cystic fibrosis and had traveled to Gas Monkey Garage specifically to take photographs near one of Richard's cars. Richard allegedly ordered the fan away from the vehicle using profanity. Whether the full context was more layered than that single account, the fact that 2 experienced mechanics chose to end their time on a successful Discovery Channel show over a moment like that, one tells you precisely where their frustration level had already landed long before anything reached a breaking point. Tom put it plainly, getting fired was not something he could rationalize given the circumstances. For Dennis, each departure added weight to an accumulating truth about the garage he cared about. The people who gave it character kept leaving, and they kept leaving in ways that felt like they could have been prevented with a different kind of attention paid to the people involved. Scott McMillan's exit came earliest of all, and in hindsight, it set a precedent that nobody was ready to accept at the time. He had been heavily featured in the first season of Fast and Loud, one of the recognizable faces that introduced Gas Monkey Garage to the television audience that would eventually make the show a genuine phenomenon. By the end of that first season, he was gone. Scott had already established his own shop, Scott Rod's Garage, founded in 2011, so he had somewhere to go, but the timing of his departure right at the moment when everything was just beginning said something loud about the environment inside those garage walls. The revolving door had started moving before the show had even built its full audience, and Dennis, watching from his position as Richard's most trusted outside voice, could already trace the shape of what that pattern was going to produce over the years ahead. Gas Monkey Garage ran for 16 seasons on Discovery Channel and built a following that most automotive television shows never come close to touching. Richard kept driving forward after every departure, starting a podcast called Monkey Trap, unveiling a $500,000 food truck, launching new ventures the way he had always done. But the original crew that charged those first seasons with genuine electricity had scattered in too many directions, and the show eventually wrapped, partly because Richard himself wanted creative freedom that his contract with the network could not accommodate. Through all of it, Dennis remained the one constant in a cast that kept changing. He and Richard continued buying and selling cars together throughout the entire run, and in 2014, Dennis joined the Gas Monkey Foundation, which has channeled over $300,000 through vehicle donations and direct contributions to organizations working with children, veterans, the elderly, and wildlife conservation. 5 people left Gas Monkey Garage and left Dennis Collins carrying the particular weight that comes from watching something you value get worn down by pressures you understood completely but could not stop. Aaron Kaufman, Christy Brimberry, Tom Smith, Jordan Butler, and Scott McMillan each walked out through a different door for a different stated reason, but they all left the same place, and they all left Dennis with the same quiet understanding that success at that scale carries costs that never get mentioned in the highlight reel.